when it comes to this unity and diversity, which I think is kind of the underlying theme of this conversation, where we talk about breaking down sectarian boundaries, recognizing there's so much similarity. There's a unity and diversity theme going on here. Yeah. There is a common belief, and we're from the same spiritual background, so we can definitely discuss this. There's a common belief that everything is one. This is when you break down all the boundaries, you get to the singular spirit of everything is one. And it's something that I disagree with, and I'm very open about it, because I can understand the appeal. I can understand why yogis and why spiritualists can be attracted by that, because it does, like we said, break down the boundaries and help us to see the unity. But I think that there has to be a spirit of recognizing the difference. And I wanted to understand from a philosophical perspective what the Bhagavad Gita, what the Bhagavatam, or any scriptural evidence talks about. Yes, there is unity, but there's also this diversity.
Yeah, I actually feel that the principle here is an amazing contribution of the Vedic tradition about reconciling this oneness and difference. So, one of my favorite texts in the Bhagavatam uses this word called advayam, and advayam means non-dual. So it speaks about how the absolute truth or the ultimate reality can be experienced in three different phases. That non-dual thing can be experienced in a diverse form. Now, that sometimes can be a little bit confusing. That how is that possible? Yeah. And I want to give you two examples. So, one example is this story which actually you'll see on the cover of Before Religion, is essentially this outline almost, which is not quite clear, but as you look at it closer, it becomes evident it's an elephant. So this notion of the elephant emerges, and it's based on the ancient Indian tale, which is about how a group of blind men touching different parts of the elephant, and they're all coming up with different ideas of what this might be, right? So somebody thinks it's a spear, somebody thinks it's a tree, somebody thinks it's a wall, a fan, etc., etc. And they think that what they're experiencing is everything. They think that's the entirety of reality. So when, if you're touching the trunk and you think it's a snake or whatever you think it is, and I'm touching the leg and I think it's a tree. Now, if we're speaking to each other, now if what I think is it's just the tree, now you're not going to be able to relate to that. You're gonna reject that out of hand, because you're kind of like, it's very self-evident to you that it's more like a snake, because
I've not seen it like
that's
that.
Your experience, right? So when we think about just the one or the difference, you've heard me say this before, right? Like we can get into this habit of kind of mutual exclusivity, that it has to be this or that. And the Vedic tradition comes in and say it doesn't have to be this or that. It can be this and that, right? And that's one of the really interesting contributions of the Vedic. It's such a simple point, but it's so missed. And it's missed because our Western way of thinking about stuff, based on Western philosophy, is
black and white.
Put it in its boxes. That's how logic is built, right? And I want to just give you one other example. And this comes, like, this notion of oneness, absolute oneness, without any differentiation, which is what I think you're, referring to here when you have this hesitation against that idea. There's something that doesn't quite feel right there. I sometimes do this with, with groups. When you're sitting in a room and you see the sun pouring through the window, and we say, it's sunshine, right? Like, so when you see those rays of sun, like, what is that ray? Is it the sun or is it not the sun? So if I force you into a decision, is it the sun or is it not the sun? Forcing you, is it or is it not? Like, what are you going to say to that? It is and it is not, right? At the same time, it can be and it cannot be. And that point, and in the Vedic tradition, this is articulated as achinta bheda bheda tattva, which is that simultaneously it can be one and different, right? So we don't have to be forced. We don't have to create these false dichotomies that we force ourselves into and other people into. And I think that's a beautiful contribution of the Vedic tradition.
100%. It's something that we speak about a lot on my retreats and a lot on gatherings where we do speak philosophy, is this idea that God is impersonal through this energy that we see,
Right.
the energy of the world. He's also personal. He's closer, nearer than near, seated within the heart.
Right.
But he's also a person.
Right.
And the combination of these three is a holistic way of seeing God, as opposed to seeing it from one narrow lens or the other narrow lens. And I think we spend so much time arguing about it needs to be this or this. And I love how you say it. Why can it not be this and this? And I think that approach of seeing the divine, seeing the absolute truth as being not one or the other, but a holistic approach. It helps us to appreciate each other's God.
Yeah.
You know, I've understood that one who goes into a spiritual place can recognize God, even if it's not in the way that you're
Right.
personally worshipping.
Right.
And I think it would just work wonders in the world of spirituality, in the world of wellness, if we saw each other as more. Yes, we're still on this, on a path. We're on a path, but recognizing that that there's more to the truth than what we currently know. And even if I know all these things, even if I know God is impersonal, he's seated within the heart, he's also a person, even then, not closing my mind to going that's all that there is. There's so much more to that aspect, so much more to the personal truth than even I can understand just by my puny brain. And so I guess there's a requirement for humility in spirituality.
Yeah, that's a really nice point. This idea of the role of humility.
Right.
Yeah, no, I like that, because I think if you want to learn anything, you have to have some humility. You have to appreciate that I already don't know this thing, because if I already know it, why would I learn it? So at a base level, there has to be whatever we're journeying into.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And humility, I think people often get it wrong as being like downtrodden, and
Right.
Humility doesn't mean to think less of yourself.
Yeah.
It just means to think about yourself less, which
Yeah,
means that you're not so
exactly.
self-absorbed in thinking you know everything all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah,